Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the lectures given by the Cámara Peruana de Comercio Exterior. Today, we are going to continue with our English classes. Well, basically with the topics related to business and export, and but in English with some terminology and also some expressions that you can be able to use or maybe review and remind. Remember that I will be following this presentation in Facebook, okay? So you can ask me the questions that you might have or that you might need from Facebook. And even though there's a little bit of a delay in the the video, I will try my best to answer them as quickly and as best as possible, okay? So let's begin. Today we're going to talk about operations management, okay? Operations management and everything that has to do with the functioning or the way a company works from the inside out, okay? I'm talking about supply chain and stuff like that. Okay, again, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know my name yet. My name is Carlos Martinez, okay? I'm an English instructor and speaking coach. I am a former team leader at Pacifico University, and currently I work as an EFL teacher at Mater Purísima School in Miraflores. Okay, you must know it. It's near the Malecón. Okay, so let's start. Operations management. How would you define operations management, or what do you think this lecture is going to be about? For example, what comes to your mind when you think about operations management? What do you think about? What part of the enterprise do you think we are going to talk about? Are we going to talk about? Are we going to talk about the management as the people who control the company? For example, the CEOs, the COOs, the CFOs. Are we going to talk about the supervisors? No, I mean, we are going to talk about management, but about the management of the operations of the company, about how it functions, about how it works. Okay. So there are four basic things that need to be taken into account when we talk about the way the operations of a company. Okay. Again, remember, if I speak too fast or if I speak too slow, leave me your comments in the chat area so we can talk about it. So the first thing that we're going to mention first, because we're going to go into more detail with each one of these categories, is the use of technology. Okay. Nowadays, the use of technology is imperative in any type of business operation. Some companies need more or have more. Some companies require less technology, but every technology is used from the operations itself to the way we communicate, to the way we transfer the information, or we make it available to the final client or to our first tier or our second tier suppliers. So we're going to talk about the use of technology. We're also going to talk about the choice location, okay, where our operations are going to be held, where we're going to collocate our factories, our manufacturing enterprises, okay. It's important. Next, we're going to talk about managing the supply chain. Okay, you know, the supply chain is the process from beginning to end, right? Everything that the company does or needs to do from achieving all the materials it needs to produce something until how to make it reach our customers or its final destination. And finally, the development of new products. Okay, so these four, we're going to mention in more detail each one of these four categories. Okay, again, remember that at the end we're going to have one or two questions regarding these topics, and also that there is a small evaluation that CAMEX has for anybody who's interested to review certain topics about this topic. Okay, so let's begin. The first topic that we're going to talk about is, like I said before, the use of technology. Okay, when it comes to the use of technology, there are two basic um, areas in which technology is going to influence, or where technology is going to have a certain level of action, okay, or importance. The first one is the material processing technology. All the technology that is related, of course, to the production of whatever whatever product we are making. Okay, and here we're going to mention some few steps. First is, well, how we use computers to build virtual prototypes and test it. Okay, nowadays we don't need to actually make something or create something physically. We can use computers to produce prototypes and test it and see how it will react, like a prior step before making the actual object, and then of course testing it too. The use of computers to control the machine tools that shape the pieces. So now we have computers that control the computers. Okay, a computer, there are going to be computers that actually fabricate the products, but there are also going to be computers that control these other computers to make sure that they follow all the standards and all the necessary steps, and they meet the quality that we want at the end. Then there are also industrial robots that assemble parts. And then we have the RFID tags, which are radio frequency identification tags that give out information of the type of product, or the step in the product, or everything that is related to these products. They're like these square bands that sometimes you can see them in in stores. You know, they collocate these like twirls of metal, and they give out a radio frequency that gives out certain information. Like I said, it could be about material, it could be about the important details about the material. Any type of information can be collocated in these RFID tags. It depends on what we want, what information we want um, to give. And the next is the customer processing technology. This is the second part of where technology um, interacts or participates during the operations management. Okay, here we identify these: the web-based ordering and after-sales attention. You know, nowadays, and especially now with the pandemic, web-based ordering, or all the all the web-based areas of all the companies have gotten into full action, hiring more people, because now it was the only way to access service and sales, and to buy things, and to have any type of interaction or business. And even after the sale is done, there have been after sales services for delivering information, for complaints, for refunds. So these types of services were already important, but they're now important more nowadays. We can also use these types of technology for hotel reservations, for airline I mean, all these things that can be done online. And then we have the famous EPOS, or the electronic point of sale, what we call sometimes, we miscall them POSs, right? But these are the POS. This technology handles the payment and updates stock records in retail outlets. So, and also in restaurants well, nowadays it helps us to avoid the use of cash when we want to make any type of payment. Okay, so this is what the EPOS, which means the electronic point of sale technology. Now there are many, and they've gotten better and better and better. Now they send you your receipt to your cell phone, or if you want an email, or immediately you get some type of information about the transaction that you have made. So they have, in these last couple of months, the technology related EPOSs has increased greatly. Now, like I said, now they're smaller, they're wireless. You can just put your card over it, and you don't need to introduce the card. So the technology with EPOSs has increased and has advanced a lot in these last couple of months. So this is what is referred to the use of technology, which is the first item of of this lecture. Next is what I mentioned is the choice of location. The choice of location is very important due to certain factors that we're going to mention right now. First, do we want to produce domestically or do we want to outsource? What is our budget? What is how much money do we rely on? How much money do we have? Is outsourcing an option, or is domestic production our only option? Okay, so we need to take into account all these things. As we have mentioned before in the last couple of classes, outsourcing tends to be more uh, beneficial economically, because you may be able to lessen some costs by sending your business to a place where the labor force is cheap. So you have to make this decision. Next, the labor costs, the availability, and the skills. Again, going back to what we mentioned before about outsourcing, right? I mean, how much do we want to pay for what is our budget relating labor costs? Okay, do we have enough money to pay very specialized labor, or are we going to have to maybe train people? Are we going to have to hire people to train others? To avoid hiring 10 experts, we hire one expert and we hire 9 people which we can train, and maybe that is cheaper for us. Grants and subsidies. Okay, a grant is when for some are we going to have, do we have money? A grant, the difference between a grant and a subsidy is that a grant, you get a certain amount of money to do something, but normally that money doesn't have to be returned. That money is like for you to use it in whatever you want. And a subsidy is, again, we cover for a certain this money that's going to be used to cover a certain aspect of a cost, but eventually you will have to return it. But it's normally you will be able to return it with a lot of time. Basically, it's a way of helping you do your business without the money. For example, one big example of subsidy is what's happened with the Metropolitano recently. It's because of the pandemic, very few people were traveling, so they weren't able to meet their their budgets or their weekly or monthly budgets. So they were about to close because it wasn't profitable. So the government decided to subsidy the amount of money that they were not receiving, um, and they will that added to the money that they did receive, then that will cover their budgets to pay for their salaries and the maintenance of their transportation and their buses. So, but again, the difference is that a grant, you normally just forget, you use it in whatever you want, and that money is yours. Subsidies, you can still use it in whatever you want, but you will have to return it with a service or some other thing. Infrastructure, road and rail links. I mean, okay, we decide to build our company or our factory in a certain place. How are we going to interconnect it with the rest of the city? Are we going to have to invest in roads? Are we going to need rails to transport some of our products to the ports or to wherever we need it to be sent? So these things need to be taken into account when we choose a location of where we want to establish our business. Okay. Then some other things you need to take into account are the proximity to suppliers. Okay, how close are we to our first tier and a second tier suppliers? Are we going to have to invest a lot of money in transportation, or is it possible for us to save money and because we're close to where our suppliers are? Next, and also important, how convenient are we for our customers? For example, are we close to, have we made a market study, and are we close to where most people are going to demand our services? Or do our customers need to travel a lot to reach our location? Sometimes people will travel a lot, but that is when you already have when you have a reputation that backs you, um, where your reputation precedes you and people already know your quality of your product and your services, so they will make the commute for to reach your locations. But if we are new, if we are just starting, do you think it will be convenient to start in a place that is far away from where our our markets are. So we need to figure that out. Next, are there any environmental considerations? Are we going to collocate ourselves in a place that's going to affect the environment and that would maybe in the long run affect this location? For those of us who are already in our 30s and our 40s, I don't know if you remember, there was a company called Luchetti, which was in Chorrillos, and it for some reason the company decided to build its factory near the swamps in Pantano de Villa, and there was a big problem environmentally. It was so big that eventually they had it was the people who were auditing it figured out that they had paid money to the local governments to be able to build this factory there when it wasn't legally permitted, because it would affect the environment. So in the long run, after much trials and judges, they had to close down. So they didn't take into account any of their environmental considerations. And then other things that you need to take into account when you choose a location is the number of branches that you're going to have. Are we going to have one, two, three? Are we going to be only one? Um, so all these things need to be taken into account. Also, the relationship between the online presence and the physical business. Okay, is would people prefer to? I mean, sometimes people prefer to do the online business and they don't want to go to your store. So why invest in a big location? Maybe just a small location will be enough, because most of our clients are online. Or maybe vice versa. Maybe most of our clients want to go to the physical place, and maybe our online presence just needs to be good one, but a small one. Okay, so all these things need to be taken into account when we decide the choice of the location. Okay, so remember, it's very, very important, even though it might not sound like it is. Okay, you need to take into account laws, the environment. Are you close? Are you far away from the people who sell you your supplies? Or are you close or far away from the people who you're going to sell to? Okay, many things need to be taken into account when you choose a location. Very good. The next topic that we're going to mention was the developing of new products. Okay, the development of new products also has different steps and different stages. The first one that we're going to mention is the stages in the design. Okay, sorry for the typo. The stages in the design. Okay, when we create a new product, it has different stages. It is just not, okay, let's do this because I think it's good. No, there are steps that need to be followed, and there are things and there are processes that need to be taken into account when we decide to create a new product. Okay, it sounds easy and it's not that complicated, but there are steps that need to be taken into account. So what are these steps? The first is the initial idea and the concept brief. Okay, here's when you think of something, and then the concept brief is basically tell us all the details related to this product without having the product itself. Okay, the size, the color, the material, the quality, the technology that it's going to have, the cost that it's going to have, how are people going to interact with this product, how is it going to be sold, and everything that comes into account, the marketing ideas, the colors, the packaging, everything that needs to be taken into account needs to be set during the concept brief. Okay, then the screening is once we have the idea and once we have the concept brief, we're going to screen it. It's like a filter. Is it a good idea? Okay, now that we have this product, is it good? Do you think it's profitable? Who would you sell it to? How would you sell it to? To your customers? Okay, how would you sell this? Well, what do you think would be a good marketing strategy? Okay, so now we start to pass it through as many filters as we can to see if it can pass all these questions. If we start to see that it's not going through many of our questions, then it probably will not be a good product or a good idea. But if we see that it starts going easily through all our questions and all our screens, then hey, even though it's still on paper, this sounds like a good product, this sounds like a good idea. And the next step is the preliminary design. Here is when we make a design that will be it's not the finished product. I mean, everything, maybe everything inside is still like the finished product, but everything in the outside is not. um, it's like a model of what you want to sell. Okay. You don't invest all the money that you're going to that you will use in the final product, but you will invest just enough to make a working design to be able to be tested and evaluated. And then comes the next step, the feasibility studies. How feasible, feasible is how doable is something. Can how manageable is it to create this product? Okay, and now we're going to evaluate it. It goes through many tests, durability tests, for example, cell phones, um, ISO tests about water, about dusts, how durable they are if they fall, if they scratch, etc. And if maybe it fails some tests, can it be improved? Okay, maybe it failed the dropping test. It broke the first time we dropped it. Can this be improved? Can we change something so that if it falls again, it won't crack or it won't break? Okay, so we start testing all these things. Okay, now once we have all this information, we've run it through all these tests, we go into the prototype. The prototype is one step on top of the preliminary design. Now we have a product that is almost finished. Maybe there are still some things that are not completely polished, but it's a working phone that's going to be tested. We've run through all these tests, and now we have the final prototype. Again, it's going to be tested again. It's going to go through all the different types of evaluations that the product might need. And once it's done, it's going to be made into the final design. The final design is the one where all this product meets all the specifications, or it has been improved, it has been corrected, it has been evaluated in the different areas where the product needs to be evaluated, and we have our final design. And finally, we have the rollout. The rollout is when we have the product and now we're going to sell it to the product we're going to put it out in the market. And companies nowadays have big meetings. Excuse me. Apple, for example, cell phones, Apple, Samsung, they have these meetings where they show out the product. Today I think there is a presentation by Samsung of one of their new cell phones, and this is a rollout. You put out it's like presenting to the public your final creation. Okay, so this is what has to do with stages in design. Again, sorry for the typo, this D should not be there. The next is the operational issues. Okay, operational issues are, again, everything's related to the company and how it manages its product, and it's from the fabrication to its distribution. Okay, in operational issues, we have to take into account these things. First, reduce production cost and time to market by reducing complexity. Okay, sometimes if we make our product a product that is too complex, too difficult to understand, it might raise costs. So sometimes it's easier to make it simple but working, functional. Okay, by reducing the production cost, because we're making it not as complex, we are reducing costs, and of course we'll be able to set it at a better price. Determine changes that will be needed in any aspect of the factory. For example, the operational issues is that if everything that has to do with the supply, getting the supplies, making the company work, making the machines work, the people, and everything that has to do with the final product, it needs to be evaluated. If things or something needs to be changed, it has to be done immediately. It doesn't matter what. I mean, if a product has to be redone, it has to be redone. Okay, because the purpose is to create a product that is effective, and that will be a success. Okay, we need the operations, the people in charge need to take into account all these things, and they need to make sure that every aspect of the factory the human aspect, the mechanical aspect, and everything is working as a well-oiled machine. And finally, the drop of the bill of materials. This is the, I mean, everything, the bill of materials is the list of everything and anything that the company might need to function properly. And all these things, of course, will be added into the cost of the product. But if we need a certain machine to build, to be able to achieve a certain standard of quality, we need to get it. And this goes from, again, the machinery, the human resources, and every single thing that is involved in the fabrication of a product. That is the bill of materials. Okay, anything that is needed for the company to work. So if you want to summarize this, the the um, the first the second point is is the action that you're going to take to make that everything works, and the last point will be all the materials that you need to be able to apply all these changes. Okay, so everything has to do with the operational issues, reducing costs, making sure that everything works, and making sure that you have everything to make it work. And finally, in this aspect, we have the packing issues. This is a much smaller issue because sometimes some companies they create their own packages, but sometimes we don't. Okay, so does our product need any special packaging? If it does, who will make it and how much will it cost? Um, so we need to take into account all these things. Again, like I said, some companies make their own packages, some don't. And sometimes companies try to save as much money as they can in packaging, but also make it effective, make it nice for the customer. Um, because imagine you receive a brand new cell phone in an ugly box or a bag. Just Nowadays there are many platforms where people make a living by unboxing their products, just opening the box and taking out all the layers that surround your final product is an interesting thing to see, and there is a market for this. Okay, so maybe you are the kind of the person who just when it receives a product, you open it and you tear it apart and you throw it to the garbage. But there are the people who like the experience of opening the box, untaping it, open it slowly, and seeing how everything is nicely collocated in an orderly fashion, with details and things like this. So all these things need to be taken into account. Of course, this might elevate the costs, but the profit, maybe it's better. I mean, the profit that you will receive for selling something in a nice package will be good for the company. Okay, yes, it's going to cost us a little bit more, but it's going to gain us more clients as well. So at the end, the increasing or the bigger number of clients will make up for the cost. Okay, but this also needs to be taken into account. Okay, so when we develop a new product, first we need to design it, then make sure that we have everything in our company, all the physical things to be able to produce this. um, and finally, the packaging. I mean, does it need a special box or a special package? If it does, who's going to make it and how much it's going to cost? And the last topic that we're going to talk about right now is the management of the supply chain. Like I said before, the supply chain, sorry, the supply chain. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying change, but the supply chain is from the beginning, is the whole process from acquiring the raw materials to producing the product until the product reaches its final destination, which would be the customers, and even the after sales. People who will make sure that the product is working properly and people are being attended. So the first step here will be the whole supply network includes first and second tier across suppliers and customers. So, like I said, the supply chain is everything. Okay, the whole network includes first and second tier suppliers, and finally the customers. Okay, the first and second tier suppliers are the order in which you you work with a company. Okay, so this is the first company which you will be working with, or which will be supplying you material to be able to produce your product. The next thing is the original equipment manufacturer. Some companies, they, for example, there are some, when you want to build a car, for example, um, some parts are made by other companies, and but if you put together all the parts, at the end you're going to make one final product. Okay, maybe the leather is made by a specific company, maybe the seats are made by another specific company, maybe the bolts and and all the parts of the car are made by another company. The radio, the audio and video part of the car is made by another company. But so these are the original equipment manufacturers. They will sell their product, or they will supply you with their product, and all of all these small little pieces, they will be joined together to form the final product. Okay, and then they will be sold to the customer. These are the OEM, or the original equipment manufacturers. Then we have the procurement. This is like, you will be able to, is the activity of getting everything that you need to be able to produce your product. That's why we have sourcing and purchasing. Okay, you look for the things that you need and you buy them. Okay, and these are the first tier suppliers. Again, the first tier means your most important suppliers. This is the first company that you will go to get the materials you need to produce your product. Next, we have the logistics. Okay, and logistics have to do with the distribution. Again, this is like the opposite, right? One is the production and one is the distribution. Everything that comes in is the procurement, and everything that goes out is the logistics. How we're going to distribute our products. Okay, again, we have first tier customers, which will be our first level customers. There's second tier, which will be the second level customers. But again, procurement is everything you get, or you collect to be able to make your product, and the logistics is how you're going to now distribute this product that you're going to create or prepare. Then we have it has to be the material management. It has everything. Now that you have all the materials, then how you're going to manage them and use them inside the plant. And finally, the use of e-procurement. This is similar to the first one, but this has to do where there is no there is no contact. Basically, you get all your things from the internet, and you buy all your products from the internet, and you distribute all your products through the internet. Okay, so this basically is the electronic procurement. It's the same as this one here, but done electronically. Okay, you use the internet, you use the different ways of contacting or communicating with people through the internet or through web pages, and that is the meaning of the use of e-procurement. Okay, so again, if we review this, we can say that the supply chain is the whole network of like I said, from the initial production to the final production of a certain material or a certain product. Okay, and going from the machine, from the other companies that also participate in the fabrication of the product, but are like sub parts of the main of the main product. The procurement is the acquiring of all the materials you need to be able to produce it. The logistics is how you're going to distribute all these things. And then we have the material management inside the plant, and the use of e-procurement to get things using using technology. Okay, operations. So let's define what operations are first. Okay, operations is defined as the use of the resources that are devoted to the production and delivery of a product or service. So production is the initial stage, delivery is the final stage. It is the core business of a company, which supports activities like marketing, finance, human resources, etc. Okay, so the core business, the main business, has all these sub areas: marketing, finance, human resources. And it includes product development, managing the supply chain, production planning and control, billing and shipping, and other administration activities. Okay, so all these things are what is related to operations. Okay, the use of resources that are devoted to the production and delivery of a product or service. And inside the company, we have different areas: marketing, finance, human resources. And then we have operational stages like development, the managing of the supply chain, the planning and control, building and shipping of the materials or things that we use. Now, there are certain things that need to be taken into account, certain objectives that need to be met. We have the quality objective, the cost objective. We have to depend how dependable something is, the flexibility objective, and the speed objective. Now, each of these objectives will have a different goal depending on who is measuring it. For example, what is quality for the organization? An error-free process. Okay, if you have a process that is error-free, that doesn't go through any stops, it's going to be, that is quality. But for the customer, it's products that are on spec. When I say on spec, means that they are perfect. Basically, they do what you say it's going to do. Okay, so that's the difference in quality when seen by the organization and when seen by the customer. Then we have the cost. What is the cost objective for the organization? To have a high level of productivity. Okay, but for a customer is the competitive price, a price that is good, that is the standard, that is it's to have a good product at a reasonable price. That is what the customer considers as his objective regarding costs. Then dependability, how dependable something is. For an organization, it is the operational stability, that once you reach a certain standard, you maintain it. You don't need to start going from one way to another, um, having the need to change everything in your organization. Okay, and for the customer, it's a reliable delivery, in quantity and in time. Okay, if you are going to sell something to me and I'm going to, in how you're going to make it get to my hands. Are you going to send it to me? Do I need to go somewhere? Okay, but it needs to be reliable. If you tell me go, sometimes they tell us that they're going to deliver it to us in 3 days, and they take a week, and we don't feel happy. Or if they tell us that we need to go to this store because the product is there, and we go to that store and the product is not there, that doesn't make us happy. That doesn't allow the company to be a dependable company. Okay, it's unreliable. Okay, now the objective of flexibility. For an organization, this objective is met by the ability to respond to a change. Okay, again, before we mentioned that operation stability was something that we would like to achieve, but also if by some chance something needs to be changed, there must be the possibility of fixing it and restarting all over again. Okay, this is flexibility. We have the ability, we're in the capacity of changing if change needs to be done. For the customer, flexibility has to do with the volume and delivery adjustments. Okay, for example, how many options does a customer have to be able to receive a product? Okay, is it possible for me to pay once I receive the product? Is it possible for me to pay on using the internet? Is it possible for me to pay um, with check, with cash, with credit? Okay, or how is it possible for me to pick it up at the store, to receive it via air, sea, train? Okay, so if you give me all these options, you're making the experience more flexible for me. Okay, so that is the flexibility regarding to customer. And then finally, the speed for an organization is the fast throughput. Okay, and finally, for the customer is the short lead time. Short lead time means short fast throughput is how fast we can make it from raw material to finished product, and customer is how fast we can get it from the company to you, to your hands. Okay, so remember that is the difference in the objective of speed. An organization, when it talks about speed, it's how fast we can get it from raw material to final product. That's fast throughput. And customer, the short lead time is how fast it can go from the company to your hands. Okay, so notice that both organization and customer follow or need to have or look for the same objectives: quality, cost, dependability, flexibility, and speed. But each one applies it in a different way depending on who each one is. Okay, the organization or the customer. Next, developing new products. Initial ideas for new products may come from marketing or operations. These ideas are turned into a concept brief, a clear statement describing the form, function, purpose, and benefits of the product. Okay, we've mentioned this before. But there are some operational issues. First, feasibility. Okay, how doable is something? Can this actually be made? Do we have the capacity of the resources? Okay, so these are some operational issues that might appear depending on feasibility. Next, the vulnerability. Okay, and then when you're pessimistic, okay, you don't know, this is not going to work. I mean, this is not going to happen. It's not going to be profitable, etc. We need to think about what could go wrong. Okay, what would happen if this, if, for example, if we have problems with the delivery? What will happen if there's no electricity? What will happen if if there are problems with labor? Okay, what are the risks? It's very important to figure these things out, okay, beforehand. Okay, if you're not going to prepare for any type of risk, then you're going to have problems. I would rather be prepared for something that didn't happen than for something to happen and not being prepared. Notice the difference, right? I am prepared, nothing happened, that's fine, but I'm still prepared. But what if it happens and I'm not prepared? What am I going to do? Okay, so it's important to take into account the vulnerability of the operations. The components, what am I going to need? What parts will be needed? Okay, don't start thinking you should, this has to do with the first part also, being prepared. You need to have everything, and you need to make sure that you're going to have everything before you start producing something, before you start on operations. It's not a good idea to start an operation and then start thinking what you're going to need. All these things need to be taken into account, and they need to be taken care of before you start your operations. Next, the possibilities. Okay, how can we reduce costs? It's very important to, I mean, you shouldn't lose money, but you should try to reduce costs as much as possible to make your product more attractive to the final customer. Okay, is there an opportunity to standardize? Okay, because the more standardized that we are, the easier and the cheaper it will be to create certain products. If every product is different, then it's going to cost us more, and maybe the time frames will change. Next, commonality. Is it possible to be able to use the same components for all my products? Okay, all the products that this has to do with the first part also. Is it possible that every product will use the same materials, the same process? That way we don't need to change all the time. And finally, modularization. It's where we can use things in different areas. Okay, something that I used in this department or in this area can be used in another department or another area. Remember we talked about this intermodule when we talked about the containers, right? That it's the way it has to do with getting from A to B in different ways without interrupting the process. The same here. Is it possible to be able to use different parts in different moments without interrupting the process of fabrication? And finally, reductions. Okay, reduce time to market, the time taken from the concept brief to the launch. Okay, we need, is there a way of reducing this? Is there a way of reaching the customer, the final customer, in a lower time? Okay, and the reduce rollout, the phased introduction of a new product, when if we can find a way of presenting our new product in a short manner, in a quicker manner, in a more effective manner. Okay, so all these things need to be taken into account before you start the operation. You shouldn't think about these things once your operation has already started, because that's not a good idea. Okay, all these possibilities need to be taken into account before the beginning of any type of operations. And finally, managing the supply chain. Okay, the manufacturer might have a component maker as a first tier tire supplier, but also the component maker supplier. Okay, for example, a raw material company as a second tier supplier. So we have a company that works for a company that works for us. Okay, um, all together we form the upstream or the supply side of the supply chain. Okay, again, a manufacturer might have a component maker as a first tier supplier. but also the component makers supplier as a second tier supplier. Okay, so for example, we have a component that we buy component A from a certain person, but this component A is made up of B, C, and D. Okay, and whoever makes B, C, and D is the second tier supplier. They give our first supplier the products that he needs to make the product that I need. Okay, so all of these are called the upstream or the supply side of the network. Then equally, they might have a distributor as a first tier supplier. Okay, the person who's going to distribute our products to the client, and also the distributor's customer. For example, the retailer. He is the second tier customer. Okay, so I buy your products and then I sell these products to a retailer. Together, we form the downstream or the demand side of the network. So a supply chain has two sides, the supply side and the demand side. The supply side is everybody, all the people or all the products or all the phases that intervene in producing the product. And the demand side is everything that intervenes in getting the product to you. Okay. So we receive all the materials, we create the product, and then we send it back out into the market to be distributed by the retailer or the people who make it reach to the customer's hand. Now, the supply chain has needs to follow certain procedures also. For example, like I mentioned before, again, the procurement is the sourcing, purchasing from the first tier suppliers or the vendors. Next, we have the material management. Inside the plant, now we have the inventory. So now we have the material. Now inside the plant, who is going to distribute the products inside the plant? Okay, who's going to control how they reach where they're supposed to the places that they're supposed to reach? And finally, the logistics is the distribution of the final product. Okay, so the procurement is when we get all the products that we need to be able to create a product. The material management is, okay, now we have the product, how are we going to distribute this product inside the plant, inside the people who need it? And finally, the logistics is how we're going to distribute these products to whoever needs them or whoever buys them. Okay, very good. So these three things intervene in the order of the supply chain. Very good. So now let's quickly, I'm going to review what are the four main topics when we talk about operations management. I mentioned to you, I mentioned them before when we first started. They were four. Do you remember what the four were? Do you remember what the four were? Very good. The use of technology, right, is all the machines that intervene in the production of a certain product. Next, after that, we talked about the choice of location. The choice of location is important because we need to take into account if we're near our suppliers, if we're near our customers, if we need to take into account any environmental issue, any legal issue. Next, the managing of the supply chain, okay? How we're going to manage the people who bring us the materials that we need, how we're going to distribute the things that we have bought inside our company, and then how we're going to send out the final product. And finally, the developing of new products. It's always important to develop new products, but it's also very important to follow the steps necessary to develop these new products. Very good. Now, collocations. Remember that in English we have words that are called collocations, words that always go together to form a phrase, to form an expression, or to form a noun, to form a verb. These are called collocations, words that normally always go together. For example, here we have the first one is called technical expertise. Now, high level, with what word would you match the expression high level? With what words would you match the expressions high level? Technical expertise has to do with all the experience that you have in a certain technical area. Maybe using computers, maybe repairing machines, maybe maintaining the machines. Okay, so that's your technical, and that's all the expertise, how much of an expert you are. High level, here we go to high level of productivity. We want to increase not only how much product we make, but how much profit we have. If we can increase the number of products and increase our profit, then we have a high level of productivity. Okay, we don't waste too much money in things that in damaging and losses. Okay, so all these things have to be taken into account to evaluate the level of productivity. Next, fast. We mentioned this before. When you want to make the process of getting from the raw material to the final material, it's called the fast throughput. Very good. So this is the when you want to go from getting the materials and everything is individual until we have the final product that is put together. Now, frequently what? Frequently updated product range. A frequently updated product range. When we say a frequently updated product range, is that we are constantly updating our products and who we want to offer. Okay, and this sometimes this is learned through trial and error. Maybe we think that we only want to reach, for example, women in a certain market, but then we realize that men could also be interested, so we update our products for both men and women. But then we see that, hey, children can also be benefited with this, so we update our product range for men, women, and children, and so on. So we are constantly updating the range, how much of a market can be targeted by our product or products. Now, next we have downside. Downside what? Downside risk. Downside risk is when we go above, I mean, like I said before, risk. When you evaluate a product, you decide on the risks. You decide on, okay, this might cost us this, and if things go bad, we might lose this a certain amount of money or so on. But when you start to notice that after all these risks that you have already calculated, you start to go above these risks, then they are called the downside risks. Okay, when things are not going good and all your calculated risks, you're surpassing them. Okay, so that shouldn't happen. That's a downside risk. Next, vertical. Vertical integration. Very good. Vertical integration is like everybody has to do with everything, right? From the beginning to the end. Okay, nobody's an individual island. Next, economies. Economies of scale. Very good. Very good. And finally, an error-free process, which means that nothing bad happened, right? Everything went fine. And to finish, before we go, again, but now we have these expressions. Draw up what? Draw up a bill of materials. I know sometimes draw means to draw, to make a picture, but in this case means to create, or means to list all the products that you're going to put in your bill of materials, which are everything you need, everything you need for your company to work fine and to work properly. Very good. Yes, more, because we're about to finish. We're almost done. Migrate an operation. Well, we will reduce the sign complexity, before we said before, because we want to increase the profits, right? The simpler that a product is, the better. Then we have migrate an operation to the web. When we want to go from the physical place to the internet, we migrate an operation to the web. Next, put upward pressure on prices. That means that we start creating the idea that the prices that something is going to disappear or something is not going to be profitable. So we start to indirectly create pressure so that the prices will go up. Okay, that is something that sometimes people do when you speculate, right? You start creating upward pressure. Next, to have a competitive advantage when you want to have something that is will be better than the others. Okay, you want to have a product or you want to have a quality that is better than the others. Very good. Next, roll out a new product. Like I said before, is when your product is finally done, you put it, you make a marketing activity to sell it out and to put it out in the public. Next, to carry out a feasibility study is when you want to make sure that everything can be done and how doable things are. Feasible means doable, that it can be accomplished. And finally, to turn on an initial idea into a concept brief is when I transform my idea into details. I give all the details for an idea to become a final product. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your participation. The topic for Saturday is going to be production. Okay. Remember again, these lectures are to talk about certain certain concepts in English for you to start applying them in your business or enterprises. Okay. So if there are no more questions, then we will continue on Saturday. I've been reading your comments in Facebook. Again, for some reason, sometimes I don't read anything or I read them late, so I apologize for that. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me, remember here's my information. That is my email. Um, thank you, Miss. Yes, yes. These topics are interesting. Hopefully, we can get together. So the email, there's my email, and also my WhatsApp information if you want to contact me via WhatsApp, and my LinkedIn user ID. I will be glad to help you and to answer any questions that you might have here in this via any of these three forms. Okay, so thank you again, and I will see you on Saturday. Please take care. Don't go out if it's not necessary, and stay safe.